It's the kind of thing that some of you corporate dudes might not know about, but you can have a real effect on returns. Smaller businesses might not feel it as much because, you're going to get 10-15% returns as a smaller business. It might affect you a little bit, but it's not really going to wipe you out. You got a big business, you're doing like 20-30 million a year, and all of a sudden you start getting higher returns, 15-20%, will really be tough to swallow. I remember when we first started out, we were used to 15% returns in apparel. We didn't really think too much of it. We just raised the prices, try to make up for it. But when you start doing that with a bigger company, it really could affect your offer if you're raising the prices. I'm sure in a small business it probably does mean a lot, but we just never noticed it. But we did start to notice that we got to 7 figures a month, because all of a sudden if you have 15% returns, that's $150,000 a month. That's a lot of money. So we started looking at returns very, very differently. And I was like reading all over the place, reading on Reddit, reading on Twitter, business books, and there's not a lot written about how to reduce returns in my opinion, or there's not enough written about it, is to be honest with you. Which there's not a lot. I read a bunch of stuff, but nothing really got me to where I nailed it down as, oh, this is the plan, this is what I'm gonna do. I did come across it in certain books that they would address, or certain even like Reddits where they would address returns a tiny bit, but it wasn't anything comprehensive. So I came up with my own program after a while, I think, who knows. But so the start of it is, you gotta segment your returns by color, style, size, and fabric. Men's and women's, in my opinion. That's what you need to do. That's the first step. So now you're going to get a bunch of returns. You're going to see that 10% of your returns come from this color, 20% of your returns come from this style, 25% of your returns come from this fabric. I don't know what it is for you, but we started to see patterns. And once you see patterns, then you can fix stuff. If you got like straight across the board 15% returns for everything, I would say that's probably going to start to be a sizing issue. You need to work on sizing. So for us, there was a couple of areas that we could see that it was always a pattern. So that became very easy. There were certain styles that got a lot of returns. There were certain fabrics that got a lot of returns. And so we were able to start nailing down on our returns. And we were able at one point to bring them down, I would say like 9% for a few months. And then we released this new style, and it was like Armageddon for returns department at our place. We got like 50% returns on this one product. It was a really, really nice product. Everybody liked the feel of it, but it pulled a lot. And so we just got bombarded with returns. But it was good because it taught us how to deal with stuff. I had noticed the returns coming in almost right away. Within a week or two, I was like, man, we get a lot of returns on this one product, because we were pulling returns weekly by then. And I was able to spot it, and we just pulled some of the products off the shelf, looked at it, talked to some of the customers, why are you returning this? And it was just apparent. We contacted people in an email, and we're just like, hey, you bought this product recently. We're having a lot of problems with it. If you want to, we'll just issue you credit. You just keep it, and we'll issue you a credit. And it's an exchange credit you can use anytime you want, and you don't have to return anything. And people were just like, yep, they bought into that. What ended up happening was, because the return credit, the item was under $100, because the return credit was there, some of these people end up coming to the store and buying more stuff. So that kind of worked out for us. So I wouldn't say it was a money-making situation, but maybe it was a little bit of a wash between the returns and the extra business that we might not have gotten. Plus, it taught us to be more nimble with returns in our customer service, to track down things before they became an issue, which was great. And so what I started to do about then was, I started to really look at returns and try to figure out why they were coming in, and then address them in the very beginning. And I started pulling reviews, and this was where we really started to see a change in things in our business, I believe. I started taking the reviews and using them to rewrite the descriptions for the items in conjunction with the returns language that people were using in our software as a service for returns. So I now had two sources of information for returns. Not only the customer service department too would give me a spreadsheet with a bunch of stuff on it. So I collated all this together so that I would have data from reviews, data from returns, and what was the data from? I'm trying to remember. I don't know. Senility is setting in over here. So anyway, I had all that information. I started to rewrite the descriptions here and there, and the next thing you know, man, we were just crushing it. We were crushing it. We were getting a lot less returns. We were getting really good with talking to the customers and making them happy once they did get a return, because we started to realize that there is a thing in apparel that if somebody returns something on their first purchase, they are a lot less likely to buy from you the second time around. So you don't want to have a lot of returns for first-time customers. So we learned an approach that was just like, we're a small business, which we are. We're very sorry about this, which we were. And we're going to fix it, which we did. And you put those three things together for a first-time customer, even if they're very upset with you, it kind of mitigates the circumstances, so they come back to your site and they don't think of you as a foe. They look at you as like, well, they tried hard, they messed up, but they're not too bad. I'm not perfect myself. You know what I mean? They start to say to themselves, well, nobody's perfect, neither is this brand. And so we really learned to deal with returns really well like that, to take the return from a negative thing to be able to interact with the customer and let them know that we were really appreciated where they were coming from, and we were sorry we messed up, and that we would take care of things. So we went to a 45-day guarantee at that point. And to be honest with you, if somebody returns something they're really, really pissed off with it and they're talking to customer service, we always just tell customer service, just take it back. It's not a big deal. So somebody could, I've seen some doozies, man, with people returning stuff way after they bought it, but we figure it's better just to take it back and not deal with the animosity from that customer online. And I found that really works. So this is what I'll say if you get in return. Set up a system. First thing you do, color, size, style, fabric, men's and women's, fit. So if you're getting a lot of size returns, you know how to address that. You got to look at your customers, see what they're doing, see why they're returning. Do they think it's too big? Do they think it's too small? It's because of the pictures your models you're presenting, or it's because of the way it's described. Usually it's one of those things. Use those reviews to change the PDP description. Next, you're going to take all of those customers who are upset and just realize that those first-time customers are likely not to come back unless you address the situation in a certain way. First of all, it's your fault. You're going to fix it, and you got to try to learn from it. If you do those things, I think returns can become a profit center for your company. And especially if you're doing 8 figures a month, you're seeing 15% returns. It's $1.5 million a month, $18 million a year minimum. That's at the 10 million a month. If you're just barely an 8-figure brand, you're talking a lot of money. You start getting into 8, 9 figures, 10 figures, man, you really should be on this. I'm sure those big companies, they probably have a handbook about all this stuff. But you companies that are just moving from 7 figures a month to 8 figures a month, or from 6 figures a month to 7 figures, this is something that I just laid out for you that you can use to move forward. And you take all that money and throw it into ads. Take all that money you make and throw it into ads. You can clean up, you're doing 10 million a year, and you can reduce your returns by 3%. Is that 300,000? I think it's 300,000. Take that 300,000 and put it into ads. See what happens. Thanks a lot for listening.